Hello, everyone. Today is July 5th, 2007. Happy 4th of July to everyone in America. You deserve to celebrate America's birthday. Well deserved. Well, we have Rich Merritt with us tonight. Rich.
Hey, hello there, Ivan.
Welcome. Mrs. Tabasak.
Hi, Ivan. Good to be
Welcome.
back.
Thank you. Thank you. We expect to have a great show. We will be discussing mainly three topics. One is campaign contributions, part one. We are going to talk about Bethel today in reference to campaign contribution. Next week, we will talk about Danbury campaign contribution. So that should be exciting. We're also going to discuss Danbury Charter Review. Danbury is currently trying to change its charter, so we're going to talk about it. Is it good or bad for the city? Okay, now the third thing we're going to discuss is Danbury reviews land giving policy. Well, I guess the City Hall finally decided this week to review how they give land to organization, individuals, etc. So they're gonna try to do something about it. Well, I think it's a little bit too late for that. But anyway, we're gonna start with Rich Merritt. And what I would like for you to do, Rich, is, well, first of all, let me say this. Rich Merritt was actually the treasurer for Bob Burke's campaign the last time he ran.
That's true.
Right, and Bob Burke is the first selectman from Bethel.
Right.
And you helped him to win last year.
Yes.
What I want to do is get an inside look of his campaign last year so that people of Bethel will have an idea what to look forward to this year, not only for Burke, but whoever is running against him this year. Now, when we talk about campaign contribution, what exactly are we saying?
Well, first of all, what we do is if you're running for mayor or first selectman of any town, there are certain things you do to get started before you can even get any contributions. One of the things that you do is you can go online for these various forms that I'm going to be talking about. But what you, first of all, you'd get an ED 49, which is called an election document number 49. And what you do is you register with the town clerk or the city clerk your intent to run for office. Registration of candidate committee. In this case, you know, the office that sought would be first selectman or mayor, and then the candidate's name and where the candidate lives, and the committee, the name of the committee, like the committee to elect Ivan Alzame. You know, that's what would be the name of the committee, and it would be on all the checks that would be coming your way as far as contributions go. And then you have to name your treasurer and maybe a deputy treasurer. And then what you need to do is you would put down the bank, which is a depository institution. And my recommendation is you go to a bank that gives you free checking.
Sure.
Because what happens is not only that is when you file with the town clerk and Secretary of State, if you have any interest or any expenditure to that savings account, you have to have that listed. So it saves you some hassle if you don't have to report anything as far as the checking account. And you would be, the treasurer primarily would sign for the checks to be, to pay for the bills. And if the treasurer can't do it, you have a deputy treasurer who is responsible. Well, the next thing what you have to do is, with that in mind, you have to go and get what they call an SS4. That's really called an EIN number, which is an employee identification number, much like your Social Security number that you have. But since you're not an individual, you're a committee, you have to get an EIN number, and what you do is you can go to Lake Avenue and get the SS form, call up
You mean the Social Security Department in
yeah.
Danbury?
Is it, it's the IRS.
IRS. I mean IRS,
Not
I'm
Social
sorry.
Security.
Not Social Security, I'm sorry.
Politics.
I'm sorry, IRS, I'm sorry. The IRS, the SS form, IRS.
apologize.
And get an employee identification number, I'm sorry. And you fill that out. And once you have that, you go to the bank.
You're golden.
So they can process you at the bank. And they open up a checking account and they take all your information, but the IRS form is something you have to have, or
Or they won't open your account.
That's right, they won't open the account. So once that is done, you're on your way. Now, in conjunction with that, a good thing to do is to go to the post office. And depending on what post office you go to, I don't know about Danbury, but in Bethel, I took these pieces of paperwork and I opened up a bulk mail permit. So I can do a bulk mail of $200 or more worth of mailing within the town of Bethel. So I don't have to put stamps on. I don't have to sit there and lick stamps and everything. What I do is I just can have it imprinted on my campaign literature, or what I can do is I have a stamp. I go to a rubber company and I have a bulk mail permit made, like number 64, and I can stamp it on all my mailings, provided it comes over
Is it
$200.
cheaper like that?
Yeah, it's cheaper that way. Instead of, I think, at that time, 37 cents, I think we're talking 26 cents, 24 cents, somewhere's there. So if it's over $200, you can bulk. Very seldom did I use the stamp. It was all embedded on the campaign literature. That went away. You know, the printing company puts that on for you, which helps. So, and that is a very minimal amount to have that done.
And then I hope you're going to say that you have to raise some money.
Right.
And what do you need
And
to
that-
raise to run a race in Bethel to be first selectman? What's a good amount of money?
Well,
In
we faced
Danbury, you're going to raise 80
well, first
grand.
of all, we had to face a primary.
Oh,
So we had to
wow.
raise money and had a separate checking account and separate paperwork for a primary. And Bob Burke was successful in the primary, and we received money for that very minimal amount, I think $2,000, $3,000, something like that, to get our message out. And then once the primary was over, I had to take a new checking account.
Oh, a new one.
A
Not-
new
it's
one.
not the same
No,
one.
the state makes you fill out more paperwork and a new checking account. Because if you have a primary, like, you have to now do paperwork that you're going to be a candidate for the office. Before, you were in a primary. Now you're a full-fledged endorsed candidate, so you have a new checking account and new paperwork, okay? So what happens is, now that you're going to raise money, let me tell you what happens, okay? I'll get to that point. You live and die by a form called Election Document 45. That is a document that all treasurers will know by heart, okay?
And lose a lot of sleep over.
Well, that is true. Essentially what it is, it's an accounting of contributions and expenditures and various donations. And there's just different types of donations. But one of the things you have to do is when you file paperwork, you have to file like on a quarterly basis, like every January, April, July, October.
And like 7 days before.
7 days preceding an election, and within 45 days following an election. And when all is said and done, you have to file a termination report. If you have problems in there, like a deficit or surplus, you may have to file in there. But essentially, on a quarterly basis, and when you have an election, assuming there's no
Let
primary.
me butt in
Yeah, go right ahead.
as also a treasurer, and tell people who are watching, this information is very useful for the public. If you want to know who has contributed money to a candidate or both candidates, you can find out. And that's why they ask us all these questions. It must be transparent. Who is giving money to whom? We want to know. We want to follow the money because it's important. We want to know who's supporting who.
Now, Connecticut has a campaign finance law. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Doesn't affect municipal races.
It doesn't?
Well, not the public financing. Is that where you're going, Ivan?
No,
Well,
what
I want to know what the law is, period.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
the law is that
The
I have
law.
to fill out the ED 45. There's Connecticut election laws administered by the Secretary of State, Ms. Bysowitz, okay? And the paperwork that I fill out with the ED 45 goes to the town clerk, in my case, maybe to the city clerk or town clerk
Yeah.
in Danbury. I do not have to file with the state. Now, if anybody wants to see
They
the
can go
financials
there.
of the
Yeah.
candidate, they just go to town clerk's office and ask to
Ask.
see the ED 45 paperwork on committee to elect Alvin Azame.
Alcime.
Azame.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and what we do is we account for the current contribution, let's say for the
quarter,
January
yeah.
filing, and the aggregate, which is the sum total of the first filing and the second filing and filings after that. You wouldn't really have an aggregate for the first filing, I mean, because that's the same as the column. And once you receive contributions, you have to put down the name and the complete address of who contributed what.
And their employer, so you
And-
can
And
see
employers,
if Mr. Galante's associates all gave to a particular candidate, or if developers all gave to a particular candidate, you have the employer.
And their occupation.
Yep.
Now, in other words, I received a fairly substantial quantities of contributions of self-employed people, but I received their personal check, and I received money from retirement people. I would have to go through the checks and make sure that I did not get a check from a corporate check or an LLC. If it looked like it was any kind of a
Partnership.
yeah, if it looked like it was any kind of a business type check, I would have to say, I'm sorry, it has to be a personal check.
Why can't you receive corporate check or LLC check?
Well, I could.
For an
if-
ad.
Yeah, if I put an ad in an ad book. So if I had a fundraiser, the only mechanism or vehicle to receive money from a corporate type
And how
is,
much can the ads be?
uh,
Can it be a $5,000 ad?
it depends. No, I think it's
It's a
usually
limit.
1,000. What happens is you have a quarter page, half page, full page ad. So, you know, the contribution is
Now,
prorated
let's
on
say-
the size.
And it depends on the office
Mm-hmm.
sought. There's always going to be a maximum amount that you can give for first selectman, for mayor, for state representative, for governor.
Okay, now, is there a maximum? For example, let's say that I'm running and I'm doing like 20 fundraisers, right? And can you buy $1,000?
Once.
Okay, not each time.
Right.
Or, but to get around that is your wife can give 1,000 and you can give 1,000. You see what I mean?
And your sister-in-law.
Right.
And
then,
your dear aunt.
and then they want to know.
Can my dog give 1,000?
No.
No,
Okay.
because he's not a registered voter or anything.
Okay.
No, you don't have to be registered
Well,
to vote.
but he's not a person.
He's not a person.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, you have to put down whether it's a lobbyist or a spouse of a lobbyist or a dependent of a lobbyist. You have to make an indication on that. And also, you have to put down if the contributor or business that the person is associated with have a contract
With the state.
with the state for more than $5,000. That has to be indicated on it. And of course, you have to put down the date you received the check, the amount of the contribution, and keep track of the aggregate, and whether it's cash, personal check, or credit card, or other. I want to say that in our campaign, we never really took a credit card, and I always frowned on cash. I always, and I always told people that were going to get money for Burke's campaign to have a check. I liked it because I can keep a photostat of it, and and also I think I have to keep a record for at least 5 or 7 years. I don't know exactly, but you know, as far as being treasurer, you have to keep your record. A copy of a check is very, very handy. Now, I had it through the Savings Bank of Danbury. I can go home and go on the internet, and I can get a picture of all of the checks that, you know, I have a password to get in. So what you do is you have to keep track of that. And essentially, you also have to keep track of contributions and receipts from other committees or contributions from other persons other than individuals.
For instance, a Republican town committee would give money to the Republican candidate. The Democratic town committee would give money to Democratic
Do
candidates.
they have a maximum they can give?
Of course, and it's always higher than
Now,
what
what's
an
the
individual
maximum
can give.
that Burke received last year?
Maximum of what?
The
From where?
campaign contribution from the Republican committee, the Bethel's Republican town committee.
Well, they ran their own thing, and we ran ours. And essentially, we kept that separate. So the only time I had to really keep things separate from any kind of committee like that was there was like the Connecticut Republicans did some ads, you know, on the radio for us. I had to put down that they did that and what the worth of
And what
that
the
ad
value
was.
was, yeah.
And I had to put that as a I had to put that down
In kind.
as an in-kind contribution.
It wasn't
But-
money, but it had value.
Now, okay, in-kind contribution is not money, but it has values, right?
That's right.
Now, give me examples of what you consider to be in-kind contributions.
Well, anything that isn't like money. Now, let's say,
Pair of Yankee tickets,
right. let's
raffle
say
them off.
an auto call device. Let's say that you have an auto caller that you can call up all of the people in town. Well, you would have to put a value of maybe 10 cents a call. And if you
And you
call...
donate it.
And you donate it.
Not the money.
Now, what about the volunteers? If I volunteer for someone,
You're a good citizen if you volunteer for a campaign.
can you put a value?
No.
No.
Okay, that doesn't
It's
count.
priceless.
That's
Okay.
priceless. Also, anonymous contributions. We frowned on anonymous contributions.
you get them.
But you get them. So, by law, you cannot get, you do not, any contributions over $15 or over is prohibited. But every once in a while, I had like a $5 bill, a dollar bill, I had loose change. Somebody just put money in there that I didn't know, anonymously, you know. But I had to keep a record of that. And also any loans received during the period, any interest from deposits, which I didn't have because I had a free checking. Miscellaneous monies considered not contributions. But the biggest thing is to keep track of your contributors. That's mainly what happened.
And it's not that easy. We accidentally had a raffle. We didn't think it through, and the raffle tickets were only $1. And then you had to figure out who those people were who gave you $1.
Well, that's true.
Wow.
Their name, their address.
Well, that's why on a raffle ticket there's the two parts, the one you fill out. But in any case, fundraising is a little kind of sticky here because if you go to, let's say, the VFW in Danbury, for instance, you have to put down the date, the location, the type of events, and the ticket price if you're selling tickets, if it's applicable, you know. And you have to put down if there are any program book purchases or food and beverage receipt, you know. And essentially, you have to put down any purchase of advertising space, not in program book, okay? Now, one of the things with fundraising, a lot of times you go to a person's house and they do a fundraiser, you know, it's wine
their
and
home,
cheese
yeah.
in their home. Well, you don't have any ticket price. Normally what they would do is they would give you a receipt of how much the cheese cost, how much the wine cost, and you know that you would put that down. You wouldn't have to, it would be different than going to, let's say, the VFW or
Stony Hill.
Stony Hill or something like that. But that has to be all accounted for. In-kind contributions, like we went over, you know, in-kind, means something other than cash, you know, generally donated stuff. But you have to make sure that you have to put the description and the donation value, and whether they do it more than once, you have to put the aggregate down. And essentially, as far as if you have any telephone, refundable deposit to the telephone company, you put that down, and you have to keep track of that. Expenditures. Now, this is tricky. Essentially what you're doing is you're balancing a checkbook. Money comes in, I make entry in my checkbook. Money goes out, I make an entry in my checkbook. So what I did was I had an Excel program, a computer program, and I kept track on that. And then I would transfer it here on my paperwork. And the expenditures would be like, for instance, if I went to Staples to get some paper, the purpose would be, and I would code it, you know, would be, you know, paperwork. A second type of payee, if somebody
Made the purchase.
made the purchase, like if I sent, you know, my daughter to, or somebody to make the purchase, I'd have to put down,
She was the secondary
she was the
payee.
person that made the purchase, and the purchase was done at Staples. And I would have to put down the check number, the date, and the amount, okay? Essentially, that's would be in your checkbook. And now, expenses incurred during this period but not paid. Bob Burke had a policy of you don't buy anything unless you have the money.
It's a good
So-
policy.
Okay, and I would meet with them at least once a week to tell them how much is in the checking, and how much where the money was going. Also by charter, I mean by statute, I had to do that. You have to, treasurer always has to make a report to the candidate, and I would meet with them and tell them and have them look at the checkbook if he wanted to, you know, and I kept records that way, and also I would give him a computer printout. Expenses incurred during the period. Well, you know, let's say you have a $1,800 brochure bill to Alsame
yeah.
Printing Company, okay? And you don't have the money to pay it, but you incurred that expense, so you would have to put who you're obligated to and the code next to it, okay? The amount, the date, and all that. But when you file again, you have to show that you paid that bill, you know? I never really had to worry about that, because as I would get the money, I put it in the bank and pay the bill as soon as I got it, less than 30 days. And, you know, it was a lot easier not to incur debt like that. And we never had the candidate use his money out of his own pocket, you know. So I didn't really have to do a campaign expenditure on the thing. Finally, when all said and done, at the end of Bobby's campaign, we had some money left over. Now, I could have given it to a 501c3
Or had a good party.
or a good party. I could have given it to a charitable
Bethel
organization.
Republicans, I think.
And I could give it to the Bethel Republican Town Committee. Another thing, all during this process, the candidate can't give money to the town committee, but the town committee can give money to the candidate, okay? Except the only time a candidate can give money to the committee
Is there a
is
surplus?
at the surplus at this very end. So we had a very small amount, and what we did was we turned the money over to the town committee. And I filed a termination report, and that was the end of it. So the only computer work I did was keep track of this on the computer. Also what I did was, when we did target mailing, what I did was from Town Hall, you can purchase from Town Hall
Labels.
the labels and the voting registration, okay? So what I did was I separated so we could have target mailing to the veterans, target mailing to the Democrats, target mailing to the Republicans, target mailing to
Unaffiliated.
unaffiliated, and the parents of school-age kids, because we had different brochures that were going out with different issues. So I kept track of that, and what I did was I did it by household. So if there were 2 voters or 3 voters in the household, I didn't send out 3 separate mailings.
Now, it's not big money that really fuels campaigns in our area. It's really, don't you think it's the ordinary small contributions of
Precisely.
regular folks?
Now, you said Burke only took individual contributions, right?
Well, yeah, but
Mostly.
I'd say the majority of it is all individual people. There were retired people, you know, businessmen in town on their own.
How much
personal-
money did Burke raise?
Well, I believe for the regular election, I'm not too sure about the primary. I think it was about 2,000 or 3,000 for the primary, but I would say it was about 14,000.
And what's the population of Bethel?
18,000. Well, at that time it was 18,200.
And you said you raised 14,000.
That's correct.
14,000. That is not too
The
bad.
majority of them were all small contributors.
But the cost of the campaign, for instance, in Danbury is going to be like 5-6 times greater than that.
Let me ask you this.
We're very
The stakes
frugal.
are higher. You're very frugal.
Most of
Good.
the money was spent on. We made the post
Mailings.
office rich,
Yeah.
and we made the printer rich, and that was it. A mailing and everything to do with mailing, post office, and the printer.
Now, let me ask you
Getting your
this.
message out.
Did Burke receive any PAC money?
No, there was no PAC money.
There was no PAC money.
No.
And did Burke receive any corporate or LLC money?
No,
Okay.
no. I turned those checks back. He
You turned
never.
those checks-
Yeah, we couldn't receive those.
Are you aware of corporations giving money to individuals, since the corporation cannot give the money? Are you aware of them giving the money to their employees to give to Burke?
No, I wouldn't know that.
And if you know that was happening, what would you do?
I would give it back to the person who engineered that scenario of contributions.
Bundling.
Are you aware of individuals who give Burke money during the campaign who are actually working for him right now?
Working for him? No, they're all town employees. I can't think of any. Most of the people that gave to him, see, he had his own private business, the people that knew him.
Okay.
So
We
that's
have a call.
how it went.
Caller in the air.
Hey, how's it going, people? Listen, I have a question for Mr. Merritt. Mr. Merritt, the Danbury Common Council has a ordinance that you cannot just have Republicans, you have to have Democrats as the minority representation ordinance. Do you think that would apply also to independents, independents of the Party of Connecticut?
I'm not too sure of the question, but
Are you aware of that, Mrs.
The
Thompson?
question, the minority representation law of on the Common Council, you just can't have Republicans. You have to have so many Democratic seats. So would that apply to independents also?
well, in Bethel, we have a minority rule in Bethel that depending on the office, whether it's the Board of Finance, Board of Ed, any of these offices, I say majority of these offices have minority rules built in, like a certain percentage or a certain number. Let's say of a board of 7, I would say maybe 3 have to be of a minority party and 4 could be of the majority party, and a minority party at that time could be a Republican, Democrat, or
Or an independent.
unaffiliated. See, we call them unaffiliated in Bethel. We don't call them independents because we have an independent party.
Right.
So yes, if somebody's unaffiliated, they're a minority party. When it comes time,
minority
they would
party
have the
rule.
minority party rule.
So do you think that they would have to, like this election, maybe they would have to put a few independents in there because if they ran, because they are under a minority party? Is that correct?
Well, we would on the line. There's an independent party in Bethel, so they're actually considered a party, not necessarily equated to an unaffiliated. So, yes, there's provisions for the unaffiliated to be in there. If there's an election and more, let's say, Republicans get elected and they can't fill the spot, the minority party may be Democrat and may be unaffiliated. Just because you win an election doesn't necessarily that you serve, because there is a minority rule which would put a person, even though they got less votes than another person, they would be in.
But it would be I think in Bethel you have 3 selectmen, is that correct?
That is true.
So that you couldn't have 3 Republicans, so that there would be, let's say, 2 Republicans and 1 minority party. Whoever got the most votes, whether it was the Democrat who was running for selectman or the independent who was running for selectman.
Okay, well, listen, thank you very much, Mr. Merritt, Mrs. Tabersack, and Mr. Alsme. God bless.
Thank you very much. Okay, one quick question before we go on break.
Mm-hmm.
When you report your campaign contributions
Mm-hmm.
to the town clerk,
Mm-hmm.
who reviews that contribution to make sure that everything is accurate in accordance to the Connecticut campaign finance law?
Well, when I first was treasurer, we had the town clerk resigned and moved out of state. And we had an assistant town clerk that was an acting town clerk. And when I first filed my paperwork, she went over to make sure my filings were correct. And when I submitted my first ED 45, she went over to make sure that that things were in the right place. In other words, she didn't look individually and see if things added up, but she made sure that I filled out all of the sheets, and whether I needed an extra sheet or not, that was filled out, and it was in order. In other words, it wasn't so much the content that she was adding up, you know, the money or anything. It was the fact that I put the right dot over the correct I and I crossed the correct T, if you know what I mean. So they just do when you first do this, they know if you're new. They just do a cursory glance to make sure that, you know, everything is in the right box, but not necessarily that the totals are correct.
One of the things, I see a lot of these reports because I'm interested in who gives money.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest faults I find is that they don't list the employer. Now, maybe you always do, but I can tell you, for instance, when you look at Mark Boughton's PAC, and you look down that employer column, you'll see 1 per page, and there are 9 or 10 donations.
Well, let me say this. I'm glad you said that, because
Why?
next week we will have you and also Gene Ericrest with us, because Danbury is supposed to file.
We'll have new,
Right, we will for the
reports
first
to
quarter.
talk
Right.
about.
So we
Well,
are
that
going
would
to
be
review those reports,
July
who
10th,
gives
July 10th or
what
so.
to whom, etc., and we will have
In the
a good
mail.
glance of how the campaign is going to prepare this fall. What we're going to do is this: we're going to go on break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Danbury trying to change its
charter,
charter,
its constitution.
its constitution. Also,
We're going to do away with civil rights.
well, we'll see about that, and also the Danbury Review land giving policy. That's something I really want to talk about. Okay, so don't.